we need a goal, right? That everybody in the Libertarian Party needs a goal. And I think that if people, I mean, maybe my plan to win an electoral vote doesn't resonate with people, maybe not, but everybody I talk to is like, holy crap, like if we pulled that off, that's insane. That would be crazy, right? So
Yeah.
I'm hoping that's a thing that people can rally behind and say, Lars, we want to do that.
This episode is brought to you by Freedom Focus. Are you tired of energy drinks that make you feel like you just smoked meth? Do you want an energy drink that is more than just a synthetic blend of hard-to-pronounce chemicals? Did you know that even natural flavoring can contain up to 90% synthetic chemical ingredients? These are some reasons why we developed Freedom Focus. Freedom Focus is more than just an energy drink. It's a botanical motivation drink. We use real fruit for flavor and monk fruit for a subtle sweetness, formulated with botanicals to provide deep hydration, mental clarity, clean energy, and mood elevation. Freedom Focus will assist in setting the course for a focused and productive day. Not to mention our company is owned and operated by people who love freedom in our own US-based manufacturing facility. Try Freedom Focus today and use it to accomplish your goals, make your vision a reality, and create your freedom. Go to freedomfocus.co and order yours today. Welcome to the Libertarian Leadership Academy podcast. I'm your host, C. Michael Pickens, and today we have another Libertarian presidential candidate. His name is Lars Mapstead, and I'm really excited to have him on the show because of his background in particular. Most of you know I'm the CEO of a botanical CBD manufacturing company, and I am a big proponent of entrepreneurship. And Lars actually is a tech entrepreneur. He's founded numerous startups, internet startups, and he's also a road racing enthusiast. So he likes the thrill of driving fast and moving fast, and he's running for president. Lars, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me.
Awesome. So let's get right into it. What do you think sets your campaign apart from all of the other people running to be the Libertarian presidential nominee?
Yeah. Well, I think that my entrepreneurial background really helps a lot in that I'm kind of an outside the box thinker, and I've kind of come at solutions that maybe other people don't really, come to. And so I'm really like looking at, like, one of the things that I'm really pushing for in this campaign is that we all know it's an uphill battle to win the presidency for a libertarian candidate, right? But I've been looking around and I was like, what's some achievable goals that could really like put libertarians on the map, right? That could really like make us stand out and give us the credibility that we deserve, right? And so one of those things is that I'm trying to win an electoral vote, okay, in 2024. And I think this is an achievable goal. And can you imagine on election night, they're going around and they're like, California is blue, Texas is red, Florida is red, New York is blue. What the hell is this gold doing on the map up here, right? And imagine if we were the deciding factor in the election, that electoral vote, threw it one way or another, or even threw it to the House to decide who was going to be the next president. They would just be talking nonstop about what the hell are these libertarians? They screwed it all up, and the way that I found out that I was a libertarian was I took an online quiz, right? And it said I was a libertarian, and I was like, what's a libertarian? So I literally had to Google what is a libertarian. So I want to get every American to Google what is a libertarian, because that's how we grow the party. That's how we get more people to go, oh, that's actually me. Maybe I should be in this thing, right? And so I think that would give us the spark and the fire and the attention that we need. And so I'm pushing for that. There's two states that are really kind of crucial. One being Maine and the other being Nebraska, because they split their electoral votes. And the amount of people that we need is rather small. In fact, Jeff Hewitt, go ahead.
Yeah, so, the last time the Libertarian Party, the only time the Libertarian Party was to get electoral vote was 1972 when Roger McBride bucked the Republican Party and then, gave his vote to John Hospers, who was our first presidential nominee, right? So you're saying you're going to focus on a couple different states, Maine being one of them, and what was the other one?
Nebraska. I mean, we're not totally focusing on those, but we're going to put resources into winning those things, because those are
Sure.
where we can make the biggest impact, right? And the other states that we'll be focusing on are the ones that are running the most candidates, and that
Mhm.
where we feel like we can lend a hand to lend our credibility and help the down ballot candidates. Because in the end, this movement starts from the ground up, and
Sure.
it's the local candidates that are more important than the president. To me, the president is about fundraising. It's about getting the message out there and being kind of a cohesive person to kind of bring the party together and push the party forward. But it's all of the down ballot candidates that are the most critical, because that's where we're going to win success, and that's where we're actually change people's lives, right? So
Mhm.
I feel like my campaign is about goals that are achievable, that can give us the most fire and the most attention possible, and that's why I think I'm different than the other candidates.
Sure. Let's discuss that a little more. Back in 2012 and 2016, the Gary Johnson campaign, you know, we had a hard time. I was the chair of the Libertarian Party of Washington 2014, and we had a hard time getting data. They didn't really want to share that information with the state parties. Gary Johnson, he stopped campaigning after the 2012 election and didn't show back up until, it was right before the convention, 6 months before the convention in 2016. What is your strategy to continually help the Libertarian Party, not just through this election, but in the future? Like, what are your future
Yeah.
plans?
Yeah, 100%. And I have a bunch of actual policies and goals in that direction, right?
Mhm.
One of the things that I've found running for president is that there's not a lot of institutional knowledge. There's not a lot of things that I can draw from. I mean, I'm pretty much running this campaign without really any input from national at all, right?
Sure.
And
Yeah.
and to me, I mean, I think national should be in charge of ballot access. They should be helping with messaging, and they should be coordinating all these things together, right? Like,
Now,
go
now
ahead.
to be fair to national,
Yeah,
they aren't going to help any Libertarian presidential nominee or candidate until they
yeah,
get the nomination. So
sure.
they're pretty much going to be hands off
Yeah.
until the delegates decide.
No, I
So.
get that. I get
Mhm.
that. But there's things that they could do to kind of help all the candidates combined. So one of the things that I have been talking about to other candidates is fundraising, right?
Mhm.
Fundraising is super challenging, and it doesn't matter if you're president or you're all the way down to the local city council. I talked to Michael White in Arkansas. He ran for Congress, and he said if he would have had a list of people that he could call, some donor list, that might have made the difference in his campaign, right? And
Sure.
because he's really good at calling people, but there's no resources, right? So one of the things I saw was that the Democrats have a thing called Act Blue. It's a PAC, okay, and you
Yep.
might have seen it on social media. And the Republicans have a thing called Win Red. It's
Mhm.
also a PAC, okay, and this is a institutional piece that helps with them for fundraising. And anytime they get a new candidate, they just plug it into this PAC, and they use that data list across social media to target people, and it's an instant fundraiser. So I've been pushing this idea of Go Gold, which would be a
Yeah.
libertarian PAC to really like help with fundraising, and that's something that can go on and on. But there's just a whole bunch of data lists, stuff that it should be available for everybody. I believe that all the past candidates for president, all those data lists should be available for all candidates to cull through and try to solicit, because just the contacting of those people again keeps them engaged, right? If I get 200,000 volunteers in my campaign, and then at the end of that no one ever contacts them again, that seems like a really wasted resource to me, right? We
Mhm.
should be contacting those people again, engaging with them, and getting them interested in the party after the race is over.
Sure, absolutely. So I would encourage you to create gold regardless of your
Yeah,
election results.
100%.
You
Yeah,
know,
no, for sure. That's on the list, and I'm part of it is I'm full bore on this campaign. So doing a whole startup right now is a little bit challenging, but it's
yeah, no
definitely on.
worries.
Yeah, but it's definitely on the list of things to do.
So let me ask you, you brought up how you found out you were a libertarian, you took a test online. How long ago was this?
Yeah. Well, I should back up a little bit. I got interested in. I grew up really poor. Like I think I mentioned to you before, I grew up with an outhouse and no electricity. But I ended up. I was in a car wreck when I was 15, and my grandfather was killed next to me by a drunk driver. Okay,
Mhm.
and I got some money out of that, and so what I wanted to do good with it. So I turned to the stock market and I started becoming like a day trader, so to speak. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've been like kind of interested in the stock market and business from a very young age. And I was listening to a lot of business news, and there was a presidential campaign that really resonated with me due to that business news. And that was Ross Perot. Okay. And he
Okay.
was talking about the debt and the deficit and how we need to reduce this and get our fiscal house in order. And that really resonated with me. And so I voted for Ross Perot. And then another guy came along and he was talking about the same things. And his name was Ron Paul. And he was talking about the Federal Reserve and ending the debt. And these things resonated with me. Now, I didn't make the connection that Ron Paul was running as a libertarian. I just voted for him because he was making sense to me, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so what happened was in 2007, I was on Facebook and all my friends were sharing this viral quiz, and I took it, and that's when I was like, this will be funny, because I've never felt like I was a Democrat or a Republican. I've always voted independent or third party because
Sure.
these guys are clowns, really. I mean, even from a young age, I knew they were clowns, right? And so, and it said libertarian. I'm like, what is that, right? And I Googled it and I was like, oh my God, these are my people. This is my thing, right? And then I said, well, who's running for president as a libertarian this time? Oh, Gary Johnson is running for president. And so that was the first campaign that I ever donated any money to, politically. In my life was, and so I would say that I was a small L libertarian, from that point on, only because that's when I knew that I was, but I probably was before that, even with all the, the thoughts that I had. And then I became a big L libertarian in 2020, I think, when I really started thinking about running for president. This has been like a 3 or 4 year process of kind of deciding that I want to run for president and use my skills for the Libertarian Party to like put us on the map, essentially.
Awesome. So when are we going to see the Lars Mapstead for President 30-minute infomercial where you're going through all the graphs like Ross Perot did?
Yeah, I love it. I've definitely contemplated that. I've definitely contemplated that for sure. I think it would be pretty good. And, I probably should make that happen.
So, the way that I look at it is that most people still don't really know what a libertarian is, right? And that's a
100%.
big challenge that
Yeah.
our candidates have to go through. We have our United States Senate candidate here, Ryan Searcy. He's at a county fair right now talking to people, getting asked that same question: what is a libertarian?
Yeah.
Right. So how would you define it as the presidential candidate to someone on the street or in an infomercial like that?
Yeah, I think what I try to say is that libertarians are not left or right. We're anti-authoritarian, which is the opposite of libertarian. And to me, what it all boils down to, what I think all libertarians share, is that we want to reduce government control in our lives. Some of us want no control, and then a few of us want like 5 people controlling us. So I mean, whether you want to go full anarchy or not, that's I think a minimal argument. What we all want is to reduce the state in our lives, that nobody knows how to live your life better than you do. And nobody should be telling you how to run your life. I think government coercion is kind of the rot and the division that's tearing this country apart. That essentially you have 2 groups of people, and they're trying to force their belief system on the other group of people. And they want to use government's gunpoint to make that happen. And they both feel justified. They both feel like they have the moral high ground, but it's in that use of coercion that causes the division. If I said, I don't like the way that you live your life, Michael, you'd be like, okay, cool, whatever, go screw yourself and go over there and do your thing. But if I said, I don't like the way you live your life, Michael, and I'm going to get the government to make you do it, suddenly you're pissed off, right? Like,
oh yeah,
I mean, you would just be like, whatever, dude, go away. But as soon as the government's involved and they're forcing you to do it, it's like, it's personal and it's a fight, right? It's like you're fighting.
Well,
yeah,
it's happening right now. We just had a local election here, and we voted on 2 ballot initiatives that were going to increase our property taxes. And guess what? They got voted in. And that's what those people are doing. They're voting to control my money. They're voting to take more of my money for the pet projects that they want.
Yeah. And you feel kind of powerless because you went and you did your vote. But if you live in an area like so much of the country, 70% of the country has no choice. 70% of the country is ruled by one or the other of the duopoly, right? And so if you live in one of those states, which is, most states, you really feel, if you're in the opposite opposing side, or if you're a person that's, a libertarian, you feel, threatened and coerced all the time. And you feel like you don't have a choice, right? And that's kind of where messaging is unrig the system, right? And if I tell you the system is rigged, that brings something into your mind. And so part of the rigged system is just this fact that you don't have a voice, that your voice doesn't really be represented in America today. For most people, like 70% of people are not represented. And that's a shame. Yeah.
And it seems like our government is moving more towards authoritarianism and complete control over our lives, regardless if it's Republican or Democrat. They just, the Republicans are just moving a little slower on the taxing and spending than the Democrats are, but they're still going in that direction.
Yeah, I mean, look, all of my life, every president and every Congress has raised the debt, in my whole life, right? It just goes up and up and up. There's no fiscal conservative. There's no such thing. There's like fiscally slower raising the debt into oblivion. I don't know, it's like, I think about Ross Perot and what he would say if he knew that we were $33 trillion in debt, and that the interest on our debt right now is $1 trillion a year, right? It's the interest on our debt right now is more than the entire military budget. Remember in the 80s, they used to say the military budget is the largest cut of the money, and if we just cut the military budget, we would all have a lot, we would get rid of the deficit and the debt. But that's not the case anymore. The military budget is now like 18% of the budget. And, the majority of it is Medicare and Social Security and entitlement programs. And they are if you look at the charts, there's no end in sight. It's just going to keep going until it explodes, right? There is a debt tsunami coming. And when it finally breaks, it's going to make the Great Depression look pathetic, right? Like the soup lines and that sort of thing, because essentially the Federal Reserve has caused this income inequality, because every time they bail out banks and every time they hand money down with their fractional reserve currency system, they essentially give all the money to the asset holders at the top. And by the time it trickles down to the regular Joe that's working guy, only 3% of the money ever makes it there, right? And so you just have this spread, and it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And when the crap hits the fan, that those guys on the top, they're not gonna be suffering, right? In the Great Depression, the Carnegie Mellon guys of the world were not suffering, right? Like the JP Morgans of the world were not suffering. It was the regular guy that couldn't find a job and that had to stand in the soup line. And that's the America that we have if we don't take care of this debt, I think.
Yeah, and that's the thing too. It was the government employees, they weren't suffering either. Like if you look at the pandemic, something recently that happened, government employees didn't take cuts. They actually worked less, and sometimes they even got paid more, because now they're getting paid hazard pay.
Yeah. So and one other thing that I say is, being in high tech, and you said you're in high tech too, that big companies every few years go through a round of layoffs, and they'll lay off like 10% of the staff almost every few years, right? And that's a way of kind of keeping the company fresh, getting new people in, and keeping the company lean, and and being prosperous, right? And I say to people, when's the last time you heard government layoffs across the board?
It doesn't happen.
Doesn't happen ever. Government only grows. That's its only purpose, right? So if we ever want to get our fiscal house in order, we have to start, having some restriction on this endless growth, right? And I also say that government breeds mediocrity, right? That essentially there's no need to excel if you work for the government. In fact, it's frowned upon. I hear friends that went to work for the government. They're like, they told me to slow down. They told me I was making them look bad because I was working too hard. And so, we need to bring more competition into the system. That's why, we have crony capitalism. We don't actually have capitalism. If we had real capitalism, things would be a lot better, right? But we have this government in bed with the corporations and broing each other out and creating monopolies. I mean, and handing out money, taxpayer money, willy-nilly to get benefits. It's just, the whole system's corrupt. The system's rigged. I want to unrig the system.
That's awesome. That's a great message. So what do you plan on doing to get the nomination, right? That's your goal, is to get the nomination. Obviously, you're traveling. Is that correct?
Yeah. No, I've definitely been traveling. I just got back from DC, and I did some podcasts there in DC. And then I went down to Mississippi with You Are the Power, Spike Cohen's organization. So I went down there with Spike. We did a radio show together down there. And then we brought attention to a kid got killed down there, Rasheem Carter. And it was a horrible, horrible killing, and it seems like the government's kind of covering it up, and no one wants to talk about it. And so we went down there to kind of try to bring justice and some closure for the family that's, you know, suffering from this tragedy, this tragic loss of life. So, you know, that sort of things I'm doing. I've been going to state conventions, but let's face it, you know, when it comes down to it, you have to get delegates to DC to vote for you. That's the bottom line, right? And so in 2007, I sold the company that I built, Friend Finder. It was 600 employees doing 350 million in annual sales. We sold it for $500 million. So I have some resources. You know, I've definitely come from the goat barn and the no electricity in the outhouse to having, you know, quite a bit of resources. And so I do have an advantage in that sense. You know, I'm slating $500,000 for my campaign. And so I think that's going to be a differentiator, and that's going to allow me to get the delegates to the convention to vote for me.
So then, as far as your strategy to get an electoral vote, it sounds like you're willing to invest your own resources, part of the way, to help make that happen.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. 100%.
A big thing that we did in Washington State back in 2016 is we tried to get major party status. To get major party status in Washington State, we have to get 5% of the vote in the presidential election, right? We got close. We got 4.85%. We were right there. And actually we got 5.1, and then our Secretary of State decided to count all of the write-in votes, where they haven't done that in 20 years, but they decided this time to do that. And,
the system is rigged. Unrig the system.
Absolutely. So that's a big thing that we're going to be looking to do.
Yeah, ballot access is critical, and that's a big. I was just literally on a policy meeting with my team. I have Larry Sharp's working for me as one of my advisors, and then I have a couple other policy people, and so we were working on ballot access essentially, and what would look like for, you know, fair ballot access for everybody, right? Because I believe that this kind of system that we have right now is completely rigged. It's not the same if you're a Democrat or Republican than you are if a libertarian or an independent. And I feel like the average guy working at a gas station, if he wants to run for president, he should have that opportunity. And right now the system is rigged and he doesn't have that opportunity, right? And so I want anybody to be able to come up, because, you know, in the past, you didn't have to be a rich guy to be president, right? You could literally come up from nothing and be president. But the way that the system is rigged now, that's not the case, right? So Maine, as an example, I donated money to ballot access in Maine. They just got passed a legislation that changed the rules, that they used to have 10,000 members to be a major party status. 10,000 registered voters, and now they only need 5,000 registered voters. So they're doing a huge push in Maine right now to get that, and I think they need to raise another $5,000 or $6,000 to like really make sure that succeeds. So yeah, that's a critical piece. And I've been in the 2022 midterms, I was backing a lot of candidates financially. I was donating money to all kinds of candidates all up and down the ballot in all different kinds of states. You know, one of the things that I'd really like to see is as many people running libertarian on as many ballots as we possibly can, because I know if you see a ballot and it's got 20 L's on it, people are going to be like, what the hell's that? And they might Google what is a libertarian, right? But the problem that we run into is this fact that we have different ballots for different people, which I think is just insane, right? If you are a Democrat, you get a different ballot than if you're a Republican. And that in the primary, and that to me is not, and that's not right. And also I want to end primaries, because I don't believe that you and I as taxpayers should be paying for private corporations, political, you know, organizations pick of who they're picking for president. I think that's ridiculous, especially when 50% of people identify as independent now. So why does half of America have to pay for these two private corporate? Like, you hear everybody railing against corporations, and then they totally embrace the Republicans and Democrats, which are corporations, right? So if they really hate corporations, they should be saying we should abolish these two things, because they're the most powerful corporations in the world, in America, right? They're the ones that are they're the biggest, most powerful corporations, and you never hear anybody saying we need to get rid of them, or they're too powerful, or no. It's just like, oh, we love those guys. When it, you know, when
I'll say it.
Yeah, you'll say it. They love free and fair elections as long as it's working for them. As soon
Sure.
as as soon as the system starts being rigged against them, they cry foul and holler. And you see that with RFK right now and the other down ballot Republicans. They're all complaining because nobody's debating them. And I'm
Yeah.
like, hello, libertarians, we're over here. We haven't been in the debates for 50 years. You've been excluding us. But now when you're not in the debates, it's a problem, right?
Yeah.
Please, please.
Yeah, I'm really interested to see what happens. You know, the Democrats aren't going to hold a debate, apparently. And then the Republicans, there's all these Republican candidates trying to get 4 donors so they can get into the debates. But it's going to be a really interesting election season.
Yeah.
So awesome. Now, what are your plans as far as moving forward to the nomination? You know, you're going to be hitting up state conventions. But as far as media, right? Like I said, we have to get out there and educate people. So do you have any plans to create any cool content, you know, videos, things like that?
Yeah, that was kind of part of the reason for going to DC was I went around for a day with videographers and photo people and had like 1,200 pictures taken with a bunch of videos. And so we've got a team now that's going to be ripping the videos apart and ripping podcasts like this apart for little clips and stuff, and creating some good media to start pushing out there. It's been a little bit, you know, we started really early. I've already been filed and running for almost 2.5 years now, but
Okay.
I needed that runway because I had never run for office before and I was trying to like feel my way through the whole thing. I needed that runway to kind of really get my feet and my head around the ideas that need to, you know, to happen in order to win this presidency or the nomination anyway.
Gotcha. So as the Libertarian nominee, you will get some media. When you go on these media outlets, what are some of the major topics you're going to be talking about?
Yeah. So I think one of the things that's always, you know, obviously the debt and the Federal Reserve are going to be high up there. I've been audited by the IRS and my state a number of times. When I sold my company, they came after me really heavy-handedly for 5 years, like an inquisition. And you know, they wanted tens of millions of dollars from me. And it was like this cloud over my head. I've been also sued a lot in business. And so every time you have a situation where somebody's like coming after you for you know, a good chunk of your money, you know, you feel defeated. You feel like, why should I bother? Because if they win, they're going to take everything from me. So I shouldn't even work anymore, right? So you kind of get this like defeated attitude. And so the government, no one should live in fear of their government. No one should live in fear of the IRS knocking and coming and taking everything away from you. And the fact that they can like reach into your bank account and just garnish all your money and your wages without really any real due process, I think is un-American, right? And no one likes the IRS. So I would like to abolish the 16th Amendment. I'm a big fan of the fair tax. I mean, of course, my ideal would be zero taxes for all, but I don't see, you know, but that's the North Star, and I'll take anything that cuts taxes between here and there, right? If Congress comes to me and says, Lars, we're willing to do a 5% tax cut across the board, I'm taking it, right? Because I'll take any gain we can get, right? So taxation, I think, is a critical piece. The Federal Reserve is a critical piece. Our economy, I think that like one of the big things as an entrepreneur and a tech guy, I think we're really missing the boat on energy. Energy, I think, is a key piece to a lot of the problems that we have, and it's a big driver of the economy. If we could reduce energy costs by like 30 or 40 or 50% from where they are right now, that would be a huge growth for our economy. It would drive jobs. It would drive, you know, better life for everybody, because everything you buy has energy cost in it. So I'm a big fan of abolishing the NRC, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. I want to kind of embrace the kind of solution that France has embraced, where right now it takes 40 years to build a nuclear power plant in America because of all the regulations and all that stuff. And we're like using Gen 2 nuclear plants still because we're so far behind the 8 ball. And France takes 4 to 6 years to build a nuclear plant. And China is already on Gen 5 nuclear plants. They're like 3 generations ahead of us. And these new plants, they don't really produce much waste. They eat the waste. They recycle the waste and just keep using it up until there's none left, kind of a thing. So, and they're a lot safer. I mean, people are still thinking nuclear technology of the 80s. We're in nuclear technology of 2023. There's thorium salt reactors. There's all kinds of new technology that we should be embracing. And I think that it's a national security issue also, right? If we're relying on foreign oil and foreign energy, we can't defend our country. And if we have a cheap energy supply here at home, then that's going to be better for us for defending our country too.
Yeah, absolutely. Great. Is there anything else?
I mean, there's tons of things, but we're looking at some things around healthcare. Everybody thinks the healthcare system is rigged, right? We're looking at kind of allowing for more competition and more transparency in the healthcare system. We believe that essentially that if you allow people to vote with their dollars instead of allowing the insurance industry to vote for you, that there would be better outcomes because there would be more competition. So we're looking at expanding HSAs and more transparency around that. So economy, healthcare, ending the war on drugs. The 50-year war on drugs is just a complete failure. After my grandfather was killed, I kind of took a deep dive into drinking and drug use for a couple of years, and it was bad. And I was able to overcome that. And I got sober when I was 17, and I've been sober ever since for 36 years. So I've dealt with drug addicts and alcoholics my entire life, like on a weekly basis, right? And so I know what is required to kind of arrest that situation. And I believe that the war on drugs actually creates more drug users and exacerbates the problem, because you essentially are handing a monopoly to the cartel. And the cartel is a business. And if your business is selling drugs, then you're going to promote more drug use, right? And so I feel like we are going in the exact wrong direction. And you hear other candidates talking about, just getting more people in prison and spending more money. And I just feel like that's never going to work. Prohibition doesn't work. So I have a bunch of plans around border security and because that's all part of the drug war, right? And so there's some things in there too. Yeah.
So what do you say to the people who are looking at cities like Portland and Seattle and San Francisco saying, look, this is what happens when you decriminalize all drugs, right? Because, what do you say to those people when you look at all of the crime that's happening and vagrancy and homelessness and all of that?
100%. I live in Santa Cruz, California, which is like Portland small. So I 100% know that. In fact, my town, out of 60,000 people in my town, we have 2,500 homeless people.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a major problem, right? And I deal with it every day. I don't even really go downtown anymore because it's just feral humans essentially, right? But I don't think that's because that we allow drug use, right? What I think it is that we allow crime. That we do not enforce the laws that are on the books to take care of the crime. I don't care if you shoot up heroin. I don't care if you smoke pot. It doesn't matter to me. If you come and steal my crap, then I have a problem with that, right? And that's where I think the breakdown is, because in a lot of these really liberal cities, they've just stopped enforcing laws. They're like, well, we're not going to arrest those people because they don't have any money. In my town, this is a prime example. In my town, there's a park and all the homeless people were living in the park, okay? And this guy's walking through the park with his dog, and the ranger gives the guy a ticket for not having his dog on a leash. And then the guy points over at the homeless people and he's like, there's 50 dogs running around there. Why aren't you giving those people tickets? And the chief of police in our town, I kid you not, said they don't have any money. Writing a ticket to them would be useless. We only write tickets that can pay to people who can pay. And that's another system is rigged, right? When you have different rules for different groups of people, it doesn't work, because now everybody's running around and they're like, well, those people don't have to obey the law. Why should I? Right. And so it leads to a lawless society. If you want people to respect the law, then you have to enforce the basic property rights that people have. And that's not being done in these cities. So I don't think it's a drug problem per se. I think it's a crime problem that it's not being dealt with.
Yeah, so we're dealing with that here in our county, and I'm sure there's many people all across the country dealing with that too, and it's in predominantly Democrat areas where they can't enforce property crime, theft, simple assaults, they can't enforce it, and they're just letting these people back out on the streets. So there was a documentary called Seattle is Dying, In
Yes.
that, the people who were getting arrested, they were showing like, oh, this guy's got 48 felonies, half of them
Yep.
are violent. And, what do we do with those people?
Yeah. Well, I mean, as president, it's not really my job to take care of that stuff, but
Sure.
I think that we do have to. In that documentary, they offered some solutions to getting people clean, essentially. And I think that some of those solutions at the end of the documentary were sort of interesting to me. But I think we need to start treating drug addiction and alcoholism as a disease instead of as a crime, which is what we do right now, right? People need to know that there's hope, that you can get sober, that you can change your life around. But a lot of the people that are there, that are homeless either have drug and alcohol addictions or they have mental health issues or both, right?
Yeah.
So it's not an easy thing. If it was easy to fix, it would already be fixed, right? But I think that we should stop criminalizing people for doing drugs, because that puts them into this cycle where they're into the system and then they feel there's no way out. So they just keep committing more crimes, right? Because they're like, screw it, I'm already in the system, I can never get out of the system. And I think there needs to be a way for people to be able to re-enter society, right, without the stigma of being a bad person, right? When people start trying to turn their lives around, they realize that the system is rigged and they can't turn their life around because the system is against them, right? And so we need to fix that and just make it easier for people to re-enter society and be productive, right? And I think part of it too is that America's sort of lost. America doesn't have a good goal that that we're all working towards, right? Something that we all really want. Like, I feel like, even though, I mean, war is horrible, but when we had World War I and World War II, people really knew what they were working for, right? They were in the factories, they were helping produce things. They weren't thinking, they didn't have time to sit idly by. So I'm not saying we should do war, but I'm saying that we should we should have projects that lift people up. Like, I think that this idea of really pushing nuclear technology and really like getting everybody involved in like making America super productive is good. We had the space race, right? Everybody got behind the space race and they're like, we want America to win. We want to like really push this so that we can, have a national identity again. And I think we're missing that, right? I think people have splintered into their little ideologies and their divisions, and I think we need something to kind of bring us together again. And I even like 9/11 brought everybody together, right? Everybody was like, okay, now we have a common goal or whatever. Unfortunately, it all seems to be war that really brings us together, which I'm not in favor of at all. But I think that we can get some things that are that we can really rally behind as a country and really push behind and get people motivated again to be productive.
So maybe like an alien invasion.
100%. I'm begging for. Well, I think I've always thought alien invasion will be great because we'll stop hating each other. Yeah. And it'll be humans versus the aliens instead of humans versus the humans, right? Because we'll suddenly realize that we're all the same and that it's actually the evil aliens that are bad. I'm totally for it.
Then we can create. Oh, there already is Starfleet or whatever, Space Force or whatever.
Yeah. One more useless government agency. Absolutely. I'll probably end that too as soon as I get in to be president.
Awesome. Well, hey, thank you so much for your time. I'm going to ask you just one more question.
Yep.
This is the Libertarian Leadership Academy podcast. So within your own words, how would you define a leader?
Well, I think empathy is a critical piece to being a good leader. That you have, there's different leadership styles. And I know that because when I was running my company with my partner, he led in a totally different way than I did, but we worked well together. He was very detail oriented and hyper focused on results, and I was more focused on having everybody be happy at their job, because I felt like people who are disgruntled and unhappy aren't going to do a good job, right? So I was always trying to like make sure everybody was heard and was listened to and that their thoughts and ideas were presented and listened to, as I think that's important. And sometimes people come up with really good ideas. I think you have to be a good listener to be a good leader, and I think empathy is a critical piece also. So yeah, I guess that's my thoughts on leadership.
So speaking of, your leadership style and making sure everyone's happy, moving in the same direction.
Yeah.
There's a lot of unhappy people in the Libertarian Party right now.
Yes, there is.
What would you do to kind of unite everyone or
Yeah.
get everyone focused on the same thing?
Yeah, so I think it's the same thing as what I was just kind of talking about with America, that we need a goal, right? That everybody in the Libertarian Party needs a goal, and I think that if people, I mean, maybe my plan to win an electoral vote doesn't resonate with people, maybe not, but everybody I talk to is like, holy crap, like if we pulled that off, that's insane. That would be crazy, right? So
Yeah.
I'm hoping that that's a thing that people can rally behind and say, Lars, we want to do that. We want to be on your team to make that happen. How can we help? How can we do it? Because even with my resources, I can't do it without everybody. I want every libertarian, if I get the nomination, to be on the ground in those states. I want them on every street corner, in every coffee shop, in every barber shop, and I want them to be spreading the libertarian message so loud and so much that the people of those cities tell us to get the hell out of there, right? I want them to be sick of us, right? I want to be plastering the TV and the radio. I want everybody in those cities should 100% know what a libertarian is and what we believe in, and then they can choose whether or not they want to participate with us and help us win that electoral vote. But I think it's totally doable. Jeff Hewitt in Riverside County won his election with maybe like $500,000 and way more people than is represented in these two different areas that I'm looking at. So it is an achievable goal. I just need people to get behind me, rally behind me, and let's make it happen.
Cool. Now, let's say someone watching this show wants to help you out, wants to become a delegate for you. Where would they go?
Yeah. Lars24.com is my website, and you can click on there. There's a how to become a delegate or become a delegate right on there. You can donate money there. One thing we didn't talk about is social media. I have Lars for President on Facebook, has like 37,000 followers, and my Twitter account at Libertarian Lars also has around 37,000 followers. I kind of I ran a bunch of car companies. That was like another business that I did, and I amassed 25 million fans on Facebook. So I'm really good at social marketing. And just in the last 28 days on Twitter, I've reached 15.8 million people with my messaging. So, and that's another reason why I think I stand out from the crowd in the candidates, is because when we go to these places, I'm going to spend the money that we have the most wisely and efficiently on advertising and getting our message out there. And so that's why I think you should vote for me.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on the show, Lars, and I wish you the best in your campaign.
Thank you so much.